Hello again. I figured I'd jump on actually and do an earlier stream today to go over a couple of things that are occurring right now. We're going through a transitionary period, and it's a good time at the beginning of these phases to kind of get a snapshot of where we are, what to expect moving forward. That sort of affects us all. This is a global energy, and it's one that if we have an understanding of what we're entering, we can navigate this better. Okay, so those familiar with astrology may understand a little bit more some of the things that I'm talking about naturally, but what I do is I try to use the correlation between astrology and tarot to look at these kinds of circumstances that are transitional. So you have to pardon my puppies. It's a beautiful day. The doors are open. There's a lot going on today, so you might hear some the doggies in the back. So these periods of time were divided by the ancients a lot of different ways, right? They divided, obviously, the moons into the months, and we also divide that with the signs. They also divided it up into various different chunks, these degrees, the 10-degree sections, 30-degree sections, and so on. And so what we're going to be discussing today is the what's called the decans, okay? And what the decans are 10-degree sections of time that are ruled by a specific astrological influence, okay? So for instance, the period of time that we're in right now is the Sun in Virgo, which is represented by, in the tarot, the card of the Eight of Pentacles. And we're moving into Venus in Virgo, which is in the tarot represented by the Nine of Pentacles. And why the Hermit is on the screen here is that the Hermit is the major arcana representation of the sign Virgo, or the month. Okay, so when we look at this, what this wheel is a very good diagram for this process throughout the year of the decans. You'll notice in the innermost circle are the elements, the triangle glyph of each individual element. In this particular case, we're in the element of Earth, which is the glyph of the downward pointing triangle with a line through it. It's the mutable version of Earth, the symbol of Virgo, and now you'll see these three planet symbols. And we're going around the wheel here counterclockwise. So we start with, again, in the green section there in Virgo, the Sun, which is the Eight of Pentacles, moving into Venus, the Nine of Pentacles, moving into Mercury, the Ten of Pentacles, right? So we're about to move tomorrow into the September 2nd. The energy shifts to Venus in Virgo from the Sun in Virgo, and shifts from the Eight of Pentacles into the Nine of Pentacles. And so this transition is something that we're all about to go through. And I have illustrated here, and we'll talk about, from the perspective of the tarot, what does this mean? Because the vocabulary of astrology is a very good method of getting at the more archetypal, the larger image. But to get to the more minutia, the human day-to-day interactions of these energies, I find tarot to be very useful for that. And they come from the same body of knowledge. So for instance, if we look at the Eight of Pentacles and we see the idea of this card from the respect of the tarot, and we look at the Eight of Pentacles here, it refers to the Sun in Virgo. And that's really the way that these small cards got their meanings, was through this same system of using the astrological correspondences as well. So there's a lot of commonality there. And now the idea of the Eight of Pentacles and the energy that we're leaving and exiting right now is the idea of the work getting done. And specifically, it's an opportunity for growth because the work is being done and being done well, you are able to develop a reputation that is good, and so you get busy, right? And now, if you were in the position through desire or through willpower to not allow the work to suffer through that growth, then that growth will persist and give you a whole sort of different phase as we move into the 9 energy, which is what we're about to move into tomorrow. Because the 9 is this idea that now that your work is done, you can finally reap the reward of that, the benefit of that, which in this case is depicted as ecstasy, sort of a blissful ignorance in her garden, in her own world, the opposite of work, right? It's like pure leisure as opposed to responsibility. Whereas in the energy of the 8, although the responsibility is willful, like it's our choice to do that because we're in the work and we care, if we choose not to and the work does suffer, the period that we're about to enter of the 9 will not be pleasant. It will not be an ecstatic, blissful peace that comes from that satisfaction. Instead, it'll be the anxiety of the opportunity being lost. And so that's an important lesson, and it's a painful one that we've already been through, we'll be through again, and we need to learn from and to try to reduce the amount of times that we allow that to happen in our lives. It's just silly the things that we can control that we allow to hurt us, right? And a lot of our decisions can affect that in a positive way. So the goal here is to find the strength, which it comes from the inside and the outside, and we'll get to that in a moment, to persist through lack of motivation, right? There's a point where the work that you started because you had this passion or this thing that you were good at, that people said, hey, you're good at this thing, go do that, right? Your cookies, the product or the item that you invented in your head 20 years ago that you finally made, whatever it is, there's a passion in the beginning, and then there's that point where it becomes work, and you have to be able to mentally and physically, because your body will be affected by your mental state, weather that. You have to get through that in order to succeed. But now it's a natural thing. There's nothing you've done wrong in this process. This is normal. It's kind of the moment in business that they call grow or die, right? It's like it's kind of about to get hard because you're getting busy and things are good, but now you've got to make change to either keep up with that or to say, okay, this is going to go away and we'll do something else. And so you have this opportunity as the period we just left in the 8 of Pentacles. Now in the 9, again, are these two options here. You've either done the work and maintained that, you made it through, you persevered through the lack of motivation, or the fact that your passionate project became work and it's not fun all the time, just sometimes. You're going to get back to the fun in this 9. It's like you get to enjoy and reap the benefit of that, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And if you haven't done the work, it's kind of an opposite of that. There's a level of anxiety and the loss of opportunity. Now the Hermit, being present in this energy at the time, and the Hermit represents the sign. So we're in the sign of Virgo right now, which is that green period to the right of this chart. And each individual sun sign, or each individual constellation or sign, it has an associated tarot card. There's 12 of the majors. The other 7 are planets, and then there's 3 more that are the elements, the mother letters, or the elements. But there's these 12 that represent the signs, and so we're in Virgo, and that is represented by the Hermit. Now the Hermit is a kind of one of these opportunity cards. It's one of these cards where if our decision leads us appropriately, serious stuff can happen, and it's all good, right? And now here's the story of the Hermit, and it's brief and powerful. And it's this: there is no truth in light. The truth is only accessible in darkness. And now, the Hermit carries this lantern, and that there's a lot of different meanings and symbolism depending upon the body of knowledge that you use, the foundation for your interpretation. But I'm gonna put it this way: that's a magic lantern that can only shine on the truth. And that's huge, right? Imagine if you had this flashlight and you can turn it on and shine it around and everything would stay what it is, but truth would get brighter, right? Now, here's the problem with that, though. It doesn't work in the sunlight. It gets drowned out, so it's effectively doesn't work in the light. It can only work in the darkness. So if you take this lantern into the darkness, everything's dark except the truth. And now that work needs to be done alone. And what we mean by darkness is outside of the lie of our personality, the things we think we are, the assumptions we make about the world, the vocabulary that we assume as opposed to our more basic thoughts before we add personality and interpretation and misunderstanding and all this other nonsense that defines our, quote, identity. The goal here is to shed that and to use our perspective without it to see the truth, right? So that's the lesson of the Hermit. And if we're fortunate enough to have that experience correctly, to not get in our own way, we are in a good position to for this Nine of Pentacles to be realized, which would essentially mean the pure satisfaction of knowing what your will really is, yours, not the identity or the personality, but yours, which is consistent with karma, with God. When those two things are consistent, and then you do the work to achieve, we do anyway, but when we're not aware of that, we miss the union, we miss the connection, and the union is important. Here we get to see that and feel that and have that, and transformation happens. There's you did where you kind of blew this opportunity during this phase. We're in a transition right now, and what that means is that there's hope. There's a chance that regardless of the whoops, you can now at least realign yourself in the proper direction. So you're not gonna gain what you would have. Sorry. But you don't have to continue to suffer, right? Like you don't have to. You can realign your karmic trajectory to be consistent with your will, right? And again, the Hermit energy is going to be with us for the month, so why not go with that, right? Why not say, okay, well, I'm gonna dust off, give myself permission to forgive myself for what I could have done and didn't. It happened. Let's move forward, and maybe have a learning take place. Ideally. So this technique that I'm referring to here is one that is kind of my favorite go-to sight unseen. Like, you know, I do a lot of readings for people, obviously, and you know, my clients are a different circumstance because we get a little more in depth and intimate, but when you don't have prior knowledge of a circumstance or somebody, this is a great way to get into the situation. So you find the appropriate date or individual based on the wheel, right? So this particular chart can be found in book 777. It can be found in Lon Duquette's body of work. It can be found in half a dozen places and thousands on the internet. It's basically the Golden Dawn system, but that's been corrected through Crowley. So it's a great system for finding dates. And what you do here is you locate your birthday, locate the day that we're in right now, locate the date of a job interview, locate the date of a love interest, locate or consider the formation of a company and when should that happen. Should you adjust that based on that, right? I mean, even just a couple of days can make a difference. Today, we're here. Tomorrow, we're going to be here. This is over. This is gone. This opportunity is past. Now we're here. And we've got to now erase this, and we'll see what we're going to be transitioning into in the next 10-day period, right? And so what this allows us to do is for instance, and this is my favorite technique to give to people that are new at both tarot or astrology. Find the chart and print it. There's various versions. And locate your birth card. Know it. You only have to memorize one. Mine happens to be the Ten of Wands. But find your birthday on the wheel. If you don't know it, send me a message and I'll locate it for you quickly, and I'll send you a message back of what your birth card is. It's kind of like your sun sign. It does not change throughout your life, and so once you memorize it, that's all you need. So I know that my birth card is Ten of Wands. Then locate the card of the current period. So right now we're going to be transitioning into the Nine of Pentacles, right? Tomorrow we start the Nine of Pentacles. Right now we're in the 8. We'll be in the 9. So grab your birth card, grab the current decan, and you have a quick little horoscope for that period of time. Very similar to a biorhythm type energy on how you're going to interact with it, all things being equal. But now with that prior knowledge, it can sort of alter your decisions. It can sort of give you a little bit of perspective on where your attention should be put, whether that's internally, externally, your behavior, and how you may want to like tone certain parts down or help to maybe elevate certain other parts. Are you going to be vulnerable or strong? Do you need someone to help you? Oh, hey, still a hippie. Thanks for joining. You know, will you be in a state of having to give to somebody else, right? And so all these things are very quickly derived once you know your birth card, and you can apply that to the current period of time. Because what we're looking at here, in the circumstance of, say, the general perspective, if you've done the work, the next 10 days are going to be really nice and easy for you. If you haven't, they're going to kind of feel a little draggy, and you're going to feel a little disappointed that you missed that opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean the opportunity won't come up again. Of course it will. And it doesn't mean you can't start the work now. It's never a bad time to start, right? So that's the basic gist of the transition that we're entering right now and where we're going to land tomorrow. And you can apply your own card to this circumstance, right? So your birth card would either go before or after these two, whatever feels right to you, and try to kind of read that as a sentence, right? So if your card is, say, the Ten of Wands, like in my case, let's pull it out and do a quick example of how you could use this on your own to really find some insight on how to react to the coming weeks. Put the Hermit aside. Okay. So what we have basically is the Ten of Wands is going to be transitioning from the 8 into the 9. That's the sentence that we're reading. We have the Ten of Wands, we have the planet of Saturn, we have the sign of Sagittarius, and then we have the element of fire, right? It's in that blue section up on the top there. And so one of the ways to read this, and this is a highly effective way to read that, is Saturn in Sagittarius. Okay. Now, if we look at the card here, this is Lon Milo Duquette's Tarot Ceremonial Magic. That note is already there. It's actually on the card. He just writes right there, Saturn in Sagittarius. So effectively, if you were using a deck similar to this, you would not require the wheel because the information's on the cards. And so you can simply reference the card, and then you wouldn't require the wheel. It's easier to see it on the wheel. I like it anyway as a device to quickly just sort of get the information you need. But he's also put the dates and the position. 20 degrees Sagittarius to 30 degrees, and that's December 13th through 21st. Now we also have the idea of it being the fiery part of air, right? Or the airy part of fire. The 10, however, is it's this idea of burden, but willful. I think it may be prudent actually also to pop up the Rider-Waite version, because the Golden Dawn system and Lon Duquette's system is maybe not the best for initial newbies. It might be like, okay, what am I looking at? Some sticks and whatever. Like, what does it mean to me? It means a lot once you know the language, but until then it might be a bit inaccessible. So let's pop up the 10 of Wands. Okay. This is the image that we're all used to in the Pamela Coleman Smith depiction. And this gentleman grabbed these sticks and is doing some work. Now, again, it's a willful act of taking on, and there's also this idea in some cases that it's too much, right? And so this is not sustainable, is kind of the gist there. It has to kind of move on. Like he's going to have to put some sticks down at some point, or eventually just get burnt out and begin to resent the work and whatever the case. But it's this idea of there being a burden to carry, but also that is self-imposed in a sense. It's not being thrust upon you, but rather you're accepting it. When you now, this can and usually does hold a person back, right? I mean, if you look at nature says, do you? Nature says, the weak die and the strong survive, and feed your own, and these types of things. But now, we've sort of evolved to a point of saying, well, we can respect the nature of life to a degree that all should have the opportunity to experience rest. And so we take burdens from others when possible. We help those who are weak and so forth. So we all hop in and out of that 10 of Wand energy, right? We all take that on at certain times in our lives, and some people it's like a compulsion, and they wind up in social work, they wind up in medicine to a lot of degrees, or in some way where they feel that they're making an impact on other people. Now, that's great. However, if it becomes unhealthy, it also becomes unsustainable, and then nobody gets helped, and then it becomes resentment. And so that's the lesson in the 10. It's okay to put some sticks down every once in a while. And if your goal is to carry the sticks no matter what, then carry a couple at a time. You'll get it all done, and you won't burn out, right? So there are ways to work with that. And now if we consider that in respect to, and let me move it here so we're looking at the same kind of idea here. Okay. If you consider how this flows, there's this idea in the 8 of Pentacle of there being an opportunity for growth if the lesson of that is learned, if it's done right. And the 9 refers to the moment where the sticks can be put down, the rest from doing the work, like the recognition that, okay, they'll like me anyway. I can say no sometimes. And also the opposite being, if the work did not get done, the work's going to get heavier, right? Because now you've got to carry your own stuff on top of the stuff that you committed to. So, it's a lesson, a warning, not to overcommit. And if you do, nothing's going to get done, and there's the anxiety of kind of being in a state of nothing being accomplished and being overwhelmed. If you are able to not overcommit, set some boundaries, even internally with yourself, do a little bit at a time. You'll get everything done, and you'll still, have that satisfaction that you're fulfilling this compulsion to help. And so by doing that, you can have the reward of the 9, right? And you can enjoy that instead of it being the lost opportunity. So that is how this would be read for somebody that shares a birth card with the 10 of Wand. And that technique is just so tried and true. I've been using it for a long time. I wasn't taught this technique. I kind of developed it on my own. However, I do see and have learned over the years through a lot of reading that there are different ways to use the decans with respect to the tarot, with respect to astrological and tarot readings. So this is one iteration. That's my own personal interpretation and how I kind of developed it before I even knew what I was doing. I just understood the decans. I had a pretty decent knowledge of astrology, and was able to kind of, once studying tarot and the astrological correspondences with tarot, make that connection. And so if you have a good vocabulary with astrology, this system of tarot is so easily understood, because it's the same language, it's the same vocabulary, just put in a different picture. Okay. So each period of time, that 10-degree period of time, is also ruled by a planet and a sign, right? I mean, the sign is unchanging for the month. We're in the period of the green right now in Virgo, right after the yellow of Leo. We're moved into the Virgo and the green there. And that first section, where the 8 of Pentacles is, and that sun symbol, is where we are right now, and we're going to be leaving, and tomorrow we're entering that next section, the 9 of Pentacles. And you'll notice that that's not a symbol for the sun anymore. Now we're moving into Venus. So there's a third section too, the 10 of Pentacles in Mercury, and that's the end of the month. So essentially what we're looking at here is that we move from this initial phase of the month, which is the sun. Then we move into the next phase of the month, which is Venus in Virgo, and then the final phase, which is the Mercury in Virgo. Now, each one of these is a different kind of energy. The initial one is like you're in and ready. The energy is new. It's full. It's directed. And it's in a kind of a pure form. Then you move into the state that we're in now, which is that transitional phase, the middle area, and that's where we are in Venus in Virgo. And so what we do is we move into the raw form of that, into, in this case, an emotional expression. And that's not necessarily bad or good. It just means that we have to be aware that if we're making decisions, they're probably going to come from the heart at first, and then will be processed after. So not a bad time to sort of every once in a while take a step back and go, okay, well, where'd that come from? Like, what's my motivation in this? Is it strictly emotional? Is it practical also? Just because it's emotional doesn't mean it's wrong. And so, but it's always good to just kind of review that from a different perspective during periods like this, where we're kind of moving into this state where we act on our heart. The heart's right most of the time, right? As long as we're reflecting ours and not somebody else's. So we talked about the Hermit. We talked about the transition here of from the Sun into Venus. We talked about the transition of the 8 into the 9 of Pentacles. And we spoke about finding your birth card and applying your birth card to the reading to see how you will what to expect within that transitionary period. What is your, basically the karmic shape that you're having to squeeze through this period of time. Everybody's is different, and once you have that knowledge, it can give you a little bit of a jump start on when things occur. You know why, and then you know how best to maybe navigate that. And so I'll be streaming later on as well, in a couple of hours after my readings are done for tomorrow. That's going to include a daily reading. It's going to include for the pets, for anybody out there, the pet owners. It'll include a birthday message. Somebody jumped into my stream yesterday, has a birthday. If you happen to be watching this now or later, happy birthday, September 1st. Also, your reading will be coming later. A general connections reading, which is really a matter of when you find yourself over the next period of time in a state where you need to communicate with somebody, whether it be for business, love, day-to-day connections, your family. Where are you going to be in that, and where are they? And what are some of the ways that we can maybe make that flow a little smoother? And where are you coming from mentally, physically, and emotionally at the same time, right? So it's a great sort of snapshot of how's this communication happening, and what's the best way that we can go about that, so that we can maximize that and minimize suffering, minimize not being understood, and letting communication happen, right? So that's basically what I had to talk about right now. Certainly anybody who participates in my live stream is entitled to a free personal message, and what that includes is me finding your birth card and applying it to the current period, and being able to give you some deeper insight into the coming weeks. And certainly anyone who has any additional questions about the transition we're going through and your individual circumstance in that, give me a call at that number, or a text message. I do answer my text messages, or an email or direct message, and I'll be happy to discuss with you your specific circumstances. Otherwise, thanks so much, and I'll be streaming tonight as well, probably for a couple hours or so, and so